tonight.
Thank you.
It's interesting because one of the members of our education team said that he very strongly felt tonight should be for men and women. And it's an interesting point that actually, I think it's true that this talk does need to be heard by men. But at the same time, I think it's a very special thing to have a safe space for women to be able to come together and hear from each other and support each other. So yes, it is an important message that the men in our community need to hear as well. But at the same time, I think it's a wonderful thing to have the opportunity this evening to hear from two incredible women in the Jewish community who are really making a difference. So I'm going to hand over to Rivka and Rami to ask you guys to tell us about the amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us. So we'll start with my story and what led us coming up to forming Gettout UK. And we'll go into talking a little bit about Gettout UK, what we do, and then we'd love questions and to answer whatever you want. So I'll start from the beginning, going back many years. So I got married for the first time 4 days after I turned 18. I moved from London to Northern California. I was on Chabad Shlichus there. And I was there for about 2.5 years for various reasons, with one baby and one on its way, moved back to the UK. I had 5 children. They were born in very quick succession, 5 kids in 7 years. And during my last pregnancy, my marriage fell apart, and it was a very amicable decision, thank God. However hard it was, very hard at the time, but thank God I got my get immediately. I had great support from my family, my friends, and you get on with it. My baby was then 6 months old. My eldest was 7. My ex moved abroad, and there I was, 25 years old, 5 children under the age of 7, and on my own. But thank God for my family and my friends. They're all nearby. And I knew I had to do something to provide for my family. So I decided to do what I love and what I've always loved since I was a child. So I went to college to get my hairdressing qualification. And simultaneously, I started training in wigs at the same time. Slowly, I was building up my reputation and my clientele. And I got on with it. I had to wait until my baby was 2 years old before I could consider dating. So by the time she reached that age, I started to see what's out there. Thought myself, I mean, I don't know, I'm being sarcastic when I say I was a real catch. I was like 25, 5 kids, under 7. I had a home, which I thought was a plus. I had a business, which I thought was a plus. But every shadchan, whatever, was like, oi, like, you know, you got so much commitment, you're like stuck there. And I'm like, I don't care moving, like whatever. But whatever, I leave my dating stories, can be a different speech. They're very entertaining, but we'll leave that for a different night. Anyway, I came across, many years later, actually, I was by myself for about 5-6 years when I came across a local guy introduced by a mutual friend. He seemed nice, like chilled, easygoing, like kids. He was kind. He wasn't perfect, but he was good. And I'd been out with a few, and I was just like, it's easy, it's local, it works. And there was potential. So we began dating, and we dated on and off over 3 years. And I waited a while before I introduced my family to him. After about 1.5 years, 2 years, I slowly introduced my children to him. It was hard. He would never commit to me. He kept saying my package was too big for him. But eventually, after I kept saying, listen, I can't change what I've got, take it or I'm out. So he decided that we should get engaged. And after 3 years, we got engaged, had a small wedding. And this is where like the next chapter of my life began. I learned very quickly then the truth that you never really know someone until you live with them. So from the beginning of that marriage, I started to feel his control over me. He refused to pay for things that involved my family. He refused me to wear certain items of clothing, to talk to certain people. He cut me off from my friends and family. He wouldn't speak to me for weeks if he didn't get his way. One day he physically pushed my eldest daughter down the stairs. When I went to protect her, he was so angry that I wasn't defending him. Again, he didn't talk for like 2 weeks to any of us. But the following day after that incident, I actually called the London Beth Din and I arranged a meeting with one of the Dayanim. And he sat there with me and he made a list of pros and cons of the marriage. And he decided that there's more pros that I should stay in the marriage. I felt cornered, but I did what I was told to do because I didn't know where else to go. The list of abuse can go on all day, but the point is just to paint a picture of the man I brought into my home and into our lives. There were many, many tears shed over those 2 years. But things came to a head one year around Purim time that I was made aware of certain allegations against him. I was then speaking to a social worker, and I was very honest with her about my concerns. There was no way that I was going to put my children at risk. So I have 4 girls, 1 boy. The social worker referred my notes to her supervisor, and she subsequently called social services. They met with each of my kids individually in their schools in a safe place. And my case was then referred to the Child Protection Unit of the local police station. And over Pesach, a police officer met with each of my children in a friend's house, away from any family members to know what was happening. And the police, they can't ask any leading questions. They have to keep it very vague. And he felt that there wasn't enough to go forward. So he told me to stay super cautious. He was not happy to not proceed, but he didn't have enough evidence in order to proceed. So I had to stay aware of every movement my ex was making. So the Shabbat after Pesach, one of my daughters was invited to stay at a friend, and my younger sister was also living. It was her in-laws' home, so she was staying there. And I'm very close with my younger sister, and I confided in her what we were going through and what was happening. Not everything, but most things. And she kind of let on that she knew more than she did. And she said to my daughter, I know about everything. I know about the police. And if you want to talk to me. And that was like when the dam opened for my daughter. And she just divulged everything that she'd been through. And that night, Motzei Shabbat, both my sisters turned up at my door while I was cleaning the fish tank from our dead fish. I will always remember. And they said, your kids aren't staying in this house. If you choose to stay, you stay. And I'm like, no one's taking my kids away from me. I'm out. And this is my home. So I actually left my home that night. We confronted him. Obviously, he denied everything. But I left my home that night. The Dayanim of the London Beth Din were fully aware and fully supportive. And that was on a Motzei Shabbat. By Sunday, the police were aware, and he had actually moved out. I came home, changed all my locks, and we moved back into the house. And that's when all the police statements and videos and everything that we had to go through the courts began. But that was when I actually asked the Dayan, I need a get. Like, this is like not even, it's a no-brainer. I need a get. And he turned around and he said to me, he's already had such a shock. He's gone through a lot. Let's let the dust settle. And in time, we'll sort out the gets. And I was horrified. Like, what did he mean? Like, I'm not a genius and I'm not like the most clever person. And I'm definitely not an expert in this department. Well, I might be a bit now, but I wasn't then. And I said, I'm like, are you joking? Like, the second he has time to think what's happening, that he's gonna start feeling angry, and he's gonna start feeling like cornered, and he's gonna start being more resentful. And no, like, you got to do it now. And I was right. This was the truth. Months passed. The court came and went. He was found guilty of 2 charges. He was sentenced at a later date. And my chance of receiving my get went further and further and further into the distance. I experienced water being poured into my home through my letterbox, stalking, harassment, defamation on social media. In total, I took out 5 restraining orders and non-molestation orders to protect myself and my children. The Beth Din tried to call him several times. Each time he had another condition, be it money, be it he wanted us to perjure ourselves, many, many, many demands. And at this point, the London Beth Din rendered him a Masarif get, a get refuser. And eventually a Saruv went out about 6 years later, publicizing his get refusal. An official document rendering this man as a get refuser, and nobody in the community can have anything to do with him. He's now ostracized from the community. My older sister then came across a Beth Din in the States called the International Beth Din, and she sent me their information and told me to be in touch with them. He needed all, the rabbi there, Rabbi Warburg, an amazing guy, he needed all my communication and to know my whole story, all the paperwork. And at that point, I just didn't have the strength to go back to where I had just been. But I had the knowledge of the International Beth Din in the recess of my mind, and I knew that I'd come back to them when I would have the strength. And it was about a year later that I reached out to them again. And Rabbi Warburg remembered me, and he'd been following my story and the whole case to date. And I sent over all the documents that he needed, and Rabbi Warburg tried to communicate with my ex, and he was not successful. And he really tried whatever he could do as well to get the get for me. But I flew over to America for a hearing. He was supposed to come via Skype. He didn't attend. It was a very, very, very hard emotional hearing, but I went and I had to do it because once they heard my case, they could decide how they could help me and free me from the situation. So yeah, the hearing was very, very intense. I broke down several times during it. I understood the importance of the hearing and I had to give over all the accurate facts, but it was really hard. And afterwards, Rabbi Warburg took me aside and he explained that all the possible potential outcomes of what they would decide for me. And the following day, I was there literally 48 hours. The following day, I flew home. It was the time of Brexit election. I landed to a new UK. We had no prime minister, and it was very, very uncertain times for us here that day. And the uncertainty of the UK reflected the uncertainty of my life at that current point. And days, weeks, and months went by, and one day, about a year or year and a bit later, I heard from Rabbi Warburg, and they decided that they, having looked in great detail of my case, they and taking many sources from everywhere, that they can void the marriage and they could give me an annulment based on many different factors. And I was shocked. I was overwhelmed, and I didn't even know how to react. I didn't actually at that point share this news with any member of my family. I needed time to digest and to process my emotions. I knew I accepted this, and I knew my family would too, but I knew there'd be many people that wouldn't accept that. And I needed just to realize that this is really over for me and I can move forward. But I kept this news to myself for weeks. I just wasn't ready to share it to anyone. And one Shabbat, I actually went to shul and I walked into my rabbi saying a speech about this big rabbi who was looking at this piece of meat, and this piece of meat was clearly not kosher. And he was like trying to decide to give his decision on it, whether they could eat from it, and all his pupils are like, it's clearly not okay. Like, what is the question? And after 3-4 hours, he said, this meat is kosher. You may eat from it and you should eat from it. And they didn't understand it. And this rabbi said to them, when a rabbi comes to a decision and makes a judgment, it becomes his responsibility and it becomes on his shoulders. So whatever the decision, like on you as the pupil, you have to just accept it and do it. And the responsibility comes onto me. And he obviously had his reasons why he felt that meat could be eaten from. And when the rabbi was speaking, I felt like he was talking to me. Like I had gone to this Beth Din in America, to these very, very, very religious and learned rabbis who had taken over a year to reach a decision on my case, and decided that due to the fact it was a short marriage, no children, and various other reasons, halachically, I'm allowed an annulment, and it was as if the marriage never happened. And the next Shabbat was actually my niece's bat mitzvah, and all my family were together under one roof. And I told my parents, my sisters, everyone that I had this annulment, and it was double celebrations. And it was amazing. I felt so much lighter and I felt so free. But, well, I did. At that point, I started to date a bit, maybe about a year after that. I needed time to digest, but I started to date. And my ex was aware that I had this annulment, and I shared it also with the Dayanim of the London Beth Din. I wasn't embarrassed of it. And my ex started saying, it's not valid, it's not accepted, it's not kosher, you're not allowed, like what she's doing is wrong. But the fact was that my nature had changed, my mental state had changed. I was no longer chasing or pressurizing the bet then forget anymore. It was a bit of a reverse psychology. And this took his power away from me. That final string of control that he had over me had been cut. Ultimately, I always knew I wanted to get. I knew it would be a challenge for my future to keep showing others and convincing people the legitimacy of an annulment. But I needed my ex to stop telling people that we were still married, that I'm his wife. And I had no hesitation or doubt that this annulment was halachically acceptable, but sadly other people do. So what happened was actually last July, as we were just come out of the first lockdown, I was browsing through social media one day through Instagram, and someone I follow, I saw had started this campaign called, it was a hashtag keeping it real. And it was highlighting that even the perfect life that you see on Instagram isn't really so perfect. So that perfect cup of coffee with that croissant on the plate doesn't, I mean, you think, wow, she's got such a great life, but you don't see the kids swinging from the chandeliers and the tornado of the kitchen, and you don't know what financial marital problems they're having. So Instagram can be quite a fake overview, to be like, it can just give a fake, I can't think of the word, to people. Perspective. Thank you. So I saw loads of people posting, be it chronic fatigue, be it infertility issues, be it just having a lockdown meltdown, just whatever it was, single, and in late 20s, and I haven't found anyone to marry, whatever it was, everyone had their thing that they were sharing. And I decided I'm going to jump on board and I'm going to talk about the topic of agonot. And I shared my story in a nutshell. I had 2 photos of me. What you see an entrepreneur and a boss mom and a woman and a businesswoman, and I got my salon, I got my kids, and I travel a lot and whatever. What you don't see is, 9.5 years of waiting for a get, blood, sweat, and tears that went into getting where I got. Like, I wrote it all out really, really well. And the response I got was mind-blowing. Everyone was talking, what? I had no idea you were still in this situation. I had no idea this is what you've been going through. And I realized that people actually really wanted to talk about this. So I started every week on my salon Instagram talking about agonot. And then I did a live about my life, and that live was shared just under 10,000 times. And that's when I really saw that there's something really big out there that we need to take care of. And loads of clients were coming into my salon, and they'd sit on the chair and I'd do whatever I do. And, they'd like kind of look at me, they'd be like, I saw your live and I didn't know, or, like we'd start talking about it. And then Remy came one day as my client and was sitting in my chair, and she is very passionate about this and she's studied a lot, and she'll tell you where she's come from shortly. But she said to me, like, Rivka, I saw your live, and what are you doing about this? Like, this is, and I'm like, I don't know. There's so much going on in my mind. I've got so much, but I have a full-time job. Are you joking? Like, I've never set up a charity before, and I've never, I don't know, but that my mind is exploding. There's so much work to be done. And she's like, so do it. And I'm like, I can't do this. And she's like, well, I've never set up a charity before either, but I'll help you. It's something I've always wanted to do. And I'm like, okay, it's like the blind leading the blind a bit, but we're like, okay, let's do it. So we came up with the name Gettout UK, and we decided to really, like, what we want to do is help any woman or any person, I can't say women because we actually have men on our books at the moment now as well, but any person who's being refused a get, we are going to help them on their journey, because there's so many gaps in our system and so many things that need to be changed, that can be changed, that we want to work to make this whole journey much shorter, much more heard. So So yeah, it was amazing. And the more we spoke about it, it actually happened about a week later. I was contacted by these lawyers and they said, we want to take on your case. There's the Coercive and Controlling Behavior Act that came out in 2015 and we've seen you on Instagram and we really feel that we can help you. And let's do it. Fine, no problems. Had some meetings and they sent a few very, very strong letters and threatened court action, and he would face 5 years imprisonment for gett refusal, which had then been recognized as a form of domestic abuse. And out of the blue, as I was locking up my salon before Rosh Hashanah, it was a Thursday, Rosh Hashanah last year was Friday night, I get a phone call from Cardassia based in, which I'd never had anything to do with, saying, we hear that you really need to get, and it's really urgent, and we should, is it really urgent? Do we have to do it before Yom Tov? And I was like, oh, I don't know, Diane, I've waited 9.5 years. Do you think if he's finally saying he wants to give it, you think it's urgent? So he's like, yeah, I see. Okay, they scheduled it in for Tzom Gedalia for the day after Rosh Hashanah. And thank God, it came to our attention the day when I got my get. Within that same week, 3 gets were given. A long-standing gett refusals were given that week because the men had heard about Gettout UK and they were scared of us vocalizing and exposing their cases, and therefore they decided that they're just going to stop what they're doing and they're just going to give their get and end this, end what they're doing, this abuse. We also were then contacted by the House of Lords to consult on the new legislation that is currently going through, recognizing gett abuse as a form of domestic abuse. And we actually were very honored and privileged to be a part of that team and to help write this legislation. So this is my story, how I got to where I am, how going through what I went through was really hard and really painful, but it made me so much stronger and made me so much aware. And to date, we now have coming up to 20 cases that we are working on now, just us two. We need help. But yeah, 20 cases, people reaching out to us to help us. Like, thank God I was helped. Now we have to do it for them. And we can talk more about Gettout UK. You want to take over?
Yeah. So I moved to the UK just a little over 2 years ago, and I moved here and I was working as the scholar in residence for the Jewish Orthodox Feminist Alliance. I'd spent many years learning in yeshiva, studying halacha, especially women's halacha and nida and all sorts of things that affect women. So I came here and I had heard that there were no halachic prenuptial agreements here, which we can talk about what that is in a little bit. But growing up in America and having gotten married in America, the aguna issue is something that's kind of at the forefront and community rabbis are very vocal about. And I knew it wasn't the case here. So I figured I'd been involved in a lot of women's educational stuff and women's halachic stuff in America. I'm going to come here and that's what I'm going to do. And I was told by a lot of people in the community, don't touch this, stay away from it. No one wants to talk about it here. And I had heard that Rivka was an aguna, and I kind of told myself I should bring it up. Like, this is what my training is for. But after Rivka posted that live, I just felt like this is the perfect confluence of time and place and opportunity. And we really have to jump on it. So we founded the organization. It really was that simple. I sat in her chair and just said, let's do it. And then like a day later, we made an Instagram and raised 10,000 pounds. And within the first week, we had 6 clients and then 13 and now almost 20. And we got drafted into legislation and everything happened very quick. I think we were kind of thinking we'd have some time to walk before we could run. But, you know, thank God we're able to kind of keep taking on the work and doing as much as we can. And so I'll just kind of go through the basics of what we do, and then we'll open it up for questions. So people have mostly heard about us through social media and through the articles that have been written. They reach out, anyone. I think our shortest case is just under a year. And our longest case is 26 years. And they reach out to us and we do a formal intake. That includes just basic information, but it also includes any sort of domestic violence, mental health, on both sides, her mental health, his mental health, which Bate Din they've been working with, where they are in the process, have they formally started it, what have their interactions been like with the Beit Din. And then after we do a proper intake, we do a risk assessment to just make sure that this person is safe in their home, that they, financially are okay, that they have enough food to eat. We work very, very closely with Jewish Women's Aid, and they've been a real partner to us. And then we sit and we basically just make a plan of action. Do we need to put this person in touch with our lawyer? Does this person need to be put in touch with a psychologist? It could be really anything. There are a lot of needs in this community, so we try to help with as many of them as possible. And then we contact the Beit Din on their behalf, and we just curiously say, how can we move this forward? We work very, very closely with our lawyer because I don't know if how active everyone is on social media, but there's been this kind of revolution in America about protesting for agunot in a way that there hasn't been in history, largely because of social media. In America, the laws of defamation are very relaxed. Freedom of speech can take you very far. I grew up in the Midwest where the Ku Klux Klan would openly march on our streets. So here, you can't just say whatever you want. You'll get sued for defamation. So we're very, very careful about what we say and how we say it. And our clients always come first. Their safety, their cases, they always come first. And we basically call up the Beit Din, push wherever we can push. We believe that our clients many of them are victims of domestic abuse. This is something that's come up a lot. And really more recently, we have, say, like our next kind of big projects that we've just started is we sent out a worldwide survey to agunot from all around the world to get hard data. It's been a very long time. The biggest study of agunot was only 20 agunot, and they were in Canada and America. So we need to get a picture of what are some of the commonalities that everyone shares. And one of the things that we have come across is that mental health, and specifically depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts are very, very high in this population. And we want to bring that back to the Beit Din because we think that the Beit Din this is a pikuach nefesh issue. This is like a saving a life issue, and it needs to be treated that way. So that's kind of like our next project that we're working on, while at the same time continuing just with our day-to-day casework of 20 clients between the two of us.
I'm trying to raise
and trying to fundraise and
campaign. Yeah.
There's always a lot to do. But I will say that I'm like amazed by Rivka every single day. It takes a really special person to go through an experience and come out not just stronger, but to come out and say, I want to keep thinking about this every day of my life while I help other people, and keep reliving it and having it brought up just for the sake of helping others and really making a change in the world. And I feel very honored that I get to work alongside Rivka in this because I am really inspired by her strength every day. So
can't do without you.
Wow, Rivka and Rami, this is really incredible and inspirational for us to hear. There's so many parts of your story, Rivka, that touched me. I think one of them actually is the way that you described your first marriage and divorce as, how the get process can be such a mutual, respectful process. And, there was no pain or animosity involved. Obviously, it's sad when a marriage dissolves, but actually the process worked for you. And how sad and painful it is to hear when someone abuses the system, and the terrible 9.5 years that you went through, but how you've taken the challenges that you've gone through and are using them to help other people. And I'm sure 9.5 years ago, if you had an organization to come to like Gettout UK, I'm sure you would have had such a different experience knowing that the support was out there. So really, kol hakavod to both of you to set up an organization like this in such a short amount of time, and to really be a place to be there for other people. Before we open up to questions, I was speaking on Friday to a very good friend of mine, who I know that you know, called Joanne Greenaway, who doesn't anymore, but used to work for the London Based In, and her mummy is here on Zoom with us. So I'm going to ask Michelle to come on and comment for us, because I know how passionate you are about Agunot and the work to be able to help support them. So maybe Michelle, I'm going to ask you to come and share a thought with Rivka and Rami, if you could. Sorry to pick on you, Michelle.
Okay, so so no pressure, but I just feel, well, first of all, Rivka and Romy, kol hakavod for what you're doing, but I just feel incredibly sad that we are still dealing with this issue after so many years. I mean, it must be 30 years ago, I remember going on protests about this situation. And okay, it's great that in the last year or so, abuse has been accepted as a way of pushing these recalcitrant husbands through the English legal system. But I just feel the fact that the Beth Dins are not dealing with this situation and moving it forward after all these years is actually, I feel it's a stain on our Judaism. I really did it. I feel it's a stain on our community, that people should be living in this situation, and which affects not only the women, but the children as well, is absolutely, it's criminal. And I've always said that if it was a case of the men having to receive the get from the woman, the problem would have been solved many years ago. And I don't know, I mean, I came, perhaps you're sorry you asked me, Jacqueline, but in a way I'd like to ask you, as a very modern and highly intelligent Rebbitzin, is there a way that rabbis' wives can get together and have some sort of an input or some sort of a way of saying, you know, what can we do about this? There was a saying, and forgive me, I can't remember the name, Blue Greenberg, perhaps the name was, if I quote her, an American, who always said that where there's a will, there's a halachic way. And I think it's really time that we found a halachic way to deal with this.
So thank you, Michelle. And I definitely don't regret asking you, because I know how passionate you are about this. My answer very often has been to get Jo to come and speak, because she has the passion and she's worked within the Beth Din. But actually, part of my answer to you is why we've brought Rivka and Romy here this evening, because actually, I agree with you. I think we do have to find a way to help these women. And, you know, it's not just about bringing interesting speakers, but it's about saying that we're here to support you and we're here to work with you. And if there is anything that we can do, you know, I don't believe that the halachic system is just going to dissolve things that have been there for thousands of years, but at the same time, finding ways to make sure that this abuse isn't allowed to continue, I think is crucial. So let me pass your question over to Rivka and Rami, and let's hear your thoughts on this.
So one of the things that I think makes this kind of uprising or revolution or whatever we want to call it that's happening right now on social media, one of the things that distinguishes it from past kind of flare-ups of this issue in history is, I think, two things. First of all, the level of influence that frum women have on social media is unprecedented. There are these young, passionate women who have 150,000, 300,000 followers. And beside for that platform that they're given, which is unprecedented, we live in an age where anger is not something that's looked down upon. If you're angry about the right things, that's okay. And you should be angry about the right things. And we see that in all different social movements happening right now. And this is no different. So we're at this really amazing time in history where anger is the vehicle that is fueling change. And there's a platform in which people, and most of the people who are sharing it are women who are typically told not to be angry. Women are angry and they are speaking up about it in a way that they haven't before. And I don't think that it's going to go away. Social media is, people think that they just post something and it goes up and it goes down. Social media is forever. It's not going to go away. And so I think the ability to be angry in a way that's productive is new. And a lot of the women who are coming forward are not the women who were previously considered angry by the rabbis. They're women who are, you know, maybe not so vocal in the community, but this is something they're passionate about. And we're seeing tens and tens of thousands of people speaking up about this. As far as what community can do, it would be awesome if every shul had a policy on whether or not they allow get refusers in, and if that policy was made public. Every person who is a member of a synagogue should know what the policy is on get refusers. And that policy should obviously be, you are not welcome in this space. And people should encourage that. People should be talking, rabbis should talk about it from the bima. People should be talking about it at their Shabbos tables. And there's this concept in the Gemara that says, go see what the people are doing. And sometimes going out to just see the reality of what's happening is something that really impacts rabbinic decision. And so I think the only thing we can do, because you're right, the halachic system is not going to get overturned, nor should it get overturned. It's something we believe in. But the tools that are available, like the tool that the International Beit Din used for Rivka, of annulling a marriage, these are tools that should be used carefully, but are available. And I think the Batei Din are very afraid to use them. And hopefully if they feel enough pressure from the community to be treating this as serious of an issue as we know it is, they'll be a little bit hastier in making these decisions and not dragging it out for 9.5 years before freeing someone.
Thank you, Amy. You reminded me actually of a story that my husband Elchanan is from Brooklyn, New York, and there's a rabbi there called Rabbi Reisman who gives a very big like Navi shir and talking about some of the Tanakh stories from the Bible on a Saturday night. And he has hundreds of people listening to his shir and thousands of people tuning in from internationally as well. And he remembers being there on a Saturday night when a get refuser walked in, and Rabbi Reisman stopped what he was saying and he said, I will not continue to give this shir until this man has left. So you're talking about in front of hundreds of people there, thousands of people watching, and he wouldn't continue till the man got up and left. And I think you're right. I think having, a policy in our shuls that is what will happen. If you are abusive in this way, then we will stop our services and we will not continue till you leave our buildings because you're not welcome there. I think that's a wonderful way of showing that, we never embarrass people if we don't have to. But this is not that situation. This is a situation that we cannot tolerate. So, you just reminded me of that story. It happened many years ago, but actually social media has this incredible way of doing just that, of doing, if you're going to behave in a way that is abhorrent, you will have to face the consequences. We won't tolerate it. So that just reminded me of that. Any questions from our audience that you'd like to ask? Anyone want to unmute yourself if you've got a question for Rivka and Rami?
Can I ask a question, Rivka? Did you get an opportunity? Have you had an opportunity to go back to the Rabbonim, the Dayanim, who were sort of so lackadaisical about asking for a get for you at the time? Have you had a chance to go back to them and say, I mean, I find it shocking, that idea that you had to, they were sort of like, oh, well, whatever. And that Romi's saying that when she came to the UK, the attitude was like, oh, we don't really want to talk about it. We don't want to rock the boat. I mean, it just all seems part of the same issue, that like, it's like something we don't want to, like something unpleasant we don't really want to deal with, instead of being something that actually has clearly the most horrific impact on people's lives. I don't, have you had an opportunity to come back and say, This could have been dealt with it properly at the time. Or not.
So good question. I mean, we have met with several of the Beth Din around London, but with the London Beth Din, we did have we had a meeting to introduce Get Out UK and to talk about who we are and what we are and what the purpose of us being there, which kind of was like the reason why we're here is because of what I went through and the lack of interaction and communication. And actually, I work very closely with Joanne, and I love Joanne dearly. I actually was this afternoon saying we must have a catch up, but I'm very, very close with her. We went on trips to the Netherlands when we tried to go to the courts there, and like she was a power woman, amazing, and it was a big loss for everyone, for her when she left, but obviously she has to do what's right for her. But so I haven't really spoken to them about what went wrong in my case, but the whole concept and creation of Get Out UK, why we're here and what we came to be, is because of what I went through. I do feel that the rabbis here, there's a lot of politically correct that they're scared of doing the wrong thing. They're scared to speak up, and they are our leaders, and they are the ones that we turn to. So it happened to me like 3 years ago. I was actually away. I was in Los Angeles at the time, and I got a phone call that they've been reaching out to my ex, and for £80,000 I can get my get. I should speak to my friends, my community, my clients, my family, and £80,000. And I'm like, I'm not buying my freedom. How dare you? How dare you, as a rabbi, turn to me as a single mom and ask me for £80,000 for my freedom? First of all, I'm a person of your community. You raise the money. You turn around and say there's a woman in your community who needs her freedom. We're raising money for her, but you're putting it on me. How dare, like, no, absolutely no, I don't need it. I'm happy with what I got. If you have an issue with my annulment, then do something about it. And I was like, I can't do this. You are our leaders. Stop being scared, stand up and do what's right. And I understand that there's a framework, and I'm not asking them to rewrite halacha. I'm just asking them for sensitivity and for strength, and to be a leader. That's what we want. We want some, and also, don't take 5 weeks between a question being asked before we get a response, because those 5 weeks, and I see it constantly with the people that we're working with, those women go crazy. You go mad. You feel so lonely and so lost, and you've got this noose around your neck and you can't breathe. And even the few people that you feel can help you are not answering you. It might take 24 hours, but it doesn't take long to write, I've got your email, I'll give you a proper answer by the end of the week. Just acknowledge it. But these are little things that that is very easy to change, that we want to emphasize is a mental health issue and seriously impacts a person's whole being going through this journey. So yeah, that's basically, I think I kind of derailed, but a little bit answered the question.
You're holding them accountable.
Yes, we are. Absolutely.
Thank you for doing that. It's really important.
Yeah.
So, Rivka, hi. Auntie Sue. So what about these people? You've got 20 families now, 20 people who are in this situation. So isn't it what you just said, by contacting the shuls, if these people are still going to shul, try and stop the community from, so they know what's going on?
So this is our issue. We need to have this official document from the Beth Din called the Saruv. The official, what's the translation of Saruv?
It's
like a declaration.
It's like a document that officially states recalcitrance.
Right. So we need this, and the rabbis are very reluctant to actually issue that. So what we're actually working on strongly now is we're having meetings with the various Beth Dins and saying, like, why does someone have to wait 7 years? If you've called this man to Beth Din, you called him once, he didn't turn up. You called him twice, he didn't turn up. You called him a third time, he didn't turn up. He is at that point a get refuser. At that point, you need to issue the certificate stating that, and with that certificate, we then can make protests because we have the backing of the Jewish courts. We can then put pressure on the shuls that they go to, the communities that they go to, the shops that they shop in. But without that from the rabbis, it's possible, but it makes it more difficult, because then we get into the territories of defamation. And they can go to their lawyer and sue us. So we need that legal backing, and that's where in America they're much quicker in giving out these declarations. But here, this is something that we really see a lack in. Actually, there was myself and one other case that would have been given a SRIV, and I think since then, no other case has actually been given this declaration since then, since my ex had this against him, which now must have been at least 10 years ago.
How can it be defamation of character if they're refusing to do something? You're not lying.
So there's all sorts of excuses, like I'm not refusing the get, but I'm just waiting until court settles in order to give the get. And we know that in many cases when people say I want to wait till court settles, what they mean is if court settles in my favor, then I'll give the get. If court doesn't settle in my favor, then I will try to either extort you out of whatever it is.
Financially, you're talking financially.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It leads to either extortion or just like what Rivka said, like people get angry. They get angry that things don't go their way, and then they just withhold it because they want to.
Because they can.
We also have quite a few cases where the man is not in the same country as the woman. So calling a man to Beit Din if he's prancing around South America is not super simple at all. And also, kind of lastly, the biggest challenge we face, which is one of the reasons that this new coercive control law is so important, is that in a case where the get refuser is not part of the Orthodox community, being summoned by a Beit Din, by a religious court, doesn't hold so much power. They can say, we're going to say that you're a get refuser and we're going to kick you out of the community, but for someone who's not in the community, they don't have much to lose. So
is it mainly people who are from, or is it not necessarily? I'm
no,
50-50.
yeah, probably 50-50.
Really?
Yeah.
But in those cases, so this is the reason that the legislation is important, because it's in those cases where the Beit Din's hands really are tied. They can't force someone to come in. So the law has to get involved, and the law has to say what you're doing is abusive. The law is very careful about the language around get refusal. It's called unreasonable refusal of a get. It acknowledges that there are certain cases where a get might take longer than others. If it's considered to be unreasonable, you can go to jail for up to 5 years. Yeah.
Right. They should all be put away. It's terrible.
And some people are happy to sit in jail. We've seen it.
Some guys are like, so okay.
Yeah, I'll sit in jail as long as she's not getting remarried and having kids with other people. I'll sit in jail.
Right. Halalically, the law can't change. I don't understand, why can't rabbis get together and think this is modern times, something is wrong with the halal, that only a man can give a get?
So we don't, believe the halacha needs to change, especially as an organization. We're not looking to change halacha. We're looking to push the courts to be accountable for the tools that are available to them within the system. And there are quite a few tools that are available within the system. They're not commonly used, and organizations like the International Beit Din, in Israel, they're also much more readily available than they are here. But we're just pushing for people to be accountable. If you're an aguna's only hope, then you have to act like you're their only hope and use the tools you spent, however many years someone spends studying this. They know the tools that are available, and they just have to choose to own their power in using those tools.
Is it easier in Israel to get a get? Is it not as difficult?
Yeah, in Israel, I mean, because there's no separation of church and state, they can take away the driver's license, they can throw them in jail.
Oh, I see. Okay.
They have tools, but there are men who are happy to sit in jail there too.
But even if a man from here were to go to Israel, we can get them blocked from leaving Israel, and as soon as they get to the border, they'll get arrested, and an Englishman or an American guy will then get put into prison and go through the Israeli system of giving a get, because any halachic marriage will be recognized by Israel.
Oh, okay.
There are ways around it if we could get the guys over there, but there's ways that they can get out, because we've had men get on a boat from Greece, or
a lot
That's
of people.
unbelievable, isn't it?
It is.
Very fake documents. Yeah, it's shocking, some of the behavior.
What help do you need? I mean, do you need people to give time, or is it just financial help?
So I'd say right now our main our main focus is financial for two reasons. We support a lot of the women through this coercive control stuff. So for many of them, it's not affordable. So we raise money to help fund them so they can take the men to court and get their freedom. So that's part of it. The other part is right now we're two people juggling 20 cases, also everything administrative, and also writing a legal bill, and also trying to collect data. And so we need to hire someone to work with us, like an administrator. So we're looking to expand and grow because the work and the need is much greater than we thought. And it's not something that's like a volunteer gig. It's something that we really need to grow an organization. Time is helpful, but a lot of what we do is it's just safeguarding sensitive casework. So we initially we had this whole plan to have volunteers kind of usher each woman through the process, and we learned very quickly that there are too many safeguarding issues with that, and we're the only two who are safeguarding certified, so we can't really be sharing our caseload. We need to hire we need to hire a social worker.
Yeah.
Can I just say a couple of things, please? First of all, Kolokavod to both of you, Rivka and Rami, for the work you're doing. I think it's absolutely fantastic that you've taken it on board. I really do. Michelle, 100% agree with every single thing you said. I obviously am going to come across feeling equally passionate about it all. A couple of points under question. I was going to ask you, what's already been asked in a way, is what more the rabbis can do, because I don't believe in changing halakha. I believe in halakha, but I do believe there are ways that, without breaking halakha, that can be done. I really liked what was said about every shul should write a policy, and I wanted to ask you if you can write that policy and send it to every shul, so that they, rather than them, because people can be a bit lazy and slow, and I wondered if you could produce that document and send it to every shul in this country, maybe put it on social media for it to be abroad as well, that with the and to every rebbetzin and every rabbi, to ask them if they will implement it. I think that would be vital, rather than waiting for every community to actually produce it themselves. I think that's a really great idea. I'm really glad that a few times tonight, that the word get abuse has been used, and I think it should be used far more freely. I think it is a form of abuse. We shouldn't be calling it we shouldn't just be calling it get refusal. We should be calling it get abuse, and that should be a common term that every single one of us use. Although I do agree with you, Jacqueline, this is a nice thing for women to share. I do believe very strongly this is a men's issue, and we should make it a men's issue as well. And there need to be men on this forum, men who appreciate how vital this is. So I'd love to ask you what more you think, rabbis, because in my mind, this is a three-tiered question. There is one about educating young people about what they do and how they go about this before they get into marriage. There's one that's doing the job that you're doing, is trying to obtain gets for women. And it's important to say that a woman has to receive a get in halakha, and can refuse to receive a get and withhold one. It's not as common, but it's not just a matter of men, more common with men, but it's important, I think, that that's good. And then to me, the most obvious and basic understanding is the rabbis, actually, is the halakha, like you mentioned, within halakha, you mentioned, Rami, I think that there were other things you can do. And I wondered what those other things that can be done, that rabbis can be informed to implement. I think it's great if they were educated, the rabbis were educated to know and weren't afraid, as you said. I heard today a rabbi in America, I've forgotten his name, YY somebody, but I've forgotten.
YY Luberson.
No, not one, in America.
Oh, right.
Great guy, who sat there so simplistic in his mind, saying, as a communal rabbi, why should I be letting somebody hear my shiurim and come into my shul? And it sounded like so simple to him. And that's how it should be. Why should these abusers be able to access everything else in shul? Like you said, Rami, if they're not connected to the community, it's a lot more difficult. But I wondered, within the framework of halakha, the annulment, I think, is a great idea, and I don't know if there are other ideas, but by the same process, why should we have to accept an annulment? Why shouldn't we just be given a get? The fact that you had to wait for, say, 6 years is appalling, absolutely appalling. And by my passion, you can hear my passion, I just want to point out, I don't know if Rivka is aware, but Rami, that my daughter is the English accent and the English voice in these women in New York who have started this social medium, and in fact are protesting tonight outside a rabbi. And I'm really sorry to say this, I as a religious woman, I'm sorry to say this, but an appalling rabbi who needs to be arrested and put in prison for what he's done. And they're protesting tonight. And I know, you know, I don't, as my daughter says, she doesn't want to be a rabbi basher. They're equally like this YY. They're marvelous rabbis out there who are helping them, absolutely fantastic people who are helping them. But how do we get the message to rabbis that things should be done? And as Michelle said, women, if it was the other way around, maybe more things would be happening quicker. Sorry to speak for so long.
So I actually, Michelle, when you quoted Blue Greenberg before, I quoted her in an article and then got a lot of flack for quoting her. People were not happy that I mentioned that. And I had to really hold myself back from asking the Rav, who told me that that's not true if he was going to sell his chametz, because that is a rabbinic loophole that was created. So yeah, I think, again, the more of the reality we can change on the ground that rabbis just have to face, that we're not going to allow people in our community to perpetrate abuse. It's not going to be acceptable. One of the challenges we face here is that it's to actually call someone a get refuser here is very complicated. The Beit Din is not handing out that title, even in cases like Rivka's, where they knew it was so clear there was abuse, she would have never married him, had to know like all of the halachic questions that anyone would have to ask according to like, was this a valid, you know, kiddushin, was this a valid like marriage and coming together? They knew the answer, but it still took 6 years to call him a get refuser. And I think the reason that rabbis are so afraid to do that is twofold. The first is admitting that someone is not coming to Beit Din, admits that the Beit Din doesn't have as much power as they hope they do, which is a really tough, it's a tough pill to swallow, to say that we are now rendering ourselves powerless. We did our best, but now it's kind of in the community's hands. That's not an easy move to ask of a Beit Din. And the other thing is that get refusers are very often abusers in other areas. And so they're often manipulative and can turn this get refusal into a bigger picture that the Beit Din doesn't understand. And if only they would wait until this was done and that was done, and they don't understand this. And so it ends up being this kind of long song and dance that the Beit Din gets exhausted by. And especially in this country, when someone's able to manipulate and paint this picture where they seem like a high functioning mentally aware person, sometimes even very emotionally aware, the Beit Din's going to have a hard time saying you're a get refuser. So the issue is, it shouldn't fall on the community to say you're not welcome in our shul, but it has to fall on the community. Every Rav should say you're not welcome in the shul, but the sad reality is these get refusers all have places for Shabbos meals. We do not hear from any of our clients that their exes feel alienated, men or women. They are active members in shul. They are invited to Shabbos meals.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. But part of the reason, and we've explained this to the Beit Din, is because unless the Beit Din makes the claim that they're being recalcitrant, the community doesn't know how to respond. So it can't just be the community, and it can't just be the Rav. It has to be the two working, hand in hand. And I think the community right now, if we see a lack of leadership, the best thing we can do is create facts on the ground. And the way to do that is by saying, you might not have a seruv against you, but I know the story and you're not welcome here.
Absolutely.
So the rabbis have to stand up a bit more, but they didn't, did they? I mean, with you, Rivka, nobody, you know, the guy still went to shul in Golders Green or wherever he was.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Still went around. Yeah, he did. once that official declaration went out, there was a bit more. There were a few places that didn't allow him in. But I know he's still going for Shabbat meals to many places. There was a couple of shuls that welcomed him with open arms. Don't
you feel like going up to saying, how can you have somebody who's been in prison for molesting or whatever, yeah? How can you still have it welcome him into a community? How can you have him at your Shabbos table? Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. But there are people that will, I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying from my opinion. So there are people that will listen to one side of the story, or they don't want to believe that there's bad in the world or bad in their community. And they'd rather, just like, oh, he's probably right. She's making it up. She's not, whatever, and that's it. But thank God the majority stood by me, and I wasn't worried at all. If they want to put out a thing, don't go to Rivka's salon, don't come to my salon, fine, no problem. Like, yeah. I stand with my head held high, and thank God, like the truth prevails. So I wasn't worried about that. But it was a constant battle. And even after that document was put out, it was put out in the Jewish Chronicle, it was sent to all the shuls, and like, the 10-day wonder that everyone talks about, and that's it. It's not like it was something. That was another thing we wrote to the Jewish News. We had I published a good article with them a few, like right before Pesach, and we was talking. They were so in awe of Get Out and the work that we're doing, and they really want to maintain a constant communication and publicization of what we're doing. And they said, I said, how about like the Jewish press, an American newspaper, they have every week a little column with all the get refusers in the United States, and it just says the name, which Beth Din has given the official title that they are get refuser, how long they've been refusing a get for, and it's there every, like, people see it or they don't see it, but if they're looking, you see the name and it's constantly there. We need some tough people or they need to hear it from the community that, yeah, this is what we want. I want to know who's in my community, just like you want to know if there's a sex offender living next door, you have the right to call up and find out who's living there, to find out. I want to know if there's someone in the community who's doing this. Yeah, it's.
So do you need to contact each shul, the rabbonim, separate, individually then, in order to get this, or does it have to be
a document? And we could do that and send it out to all the rabbis and get the support of people behind us. And then,
I mean, I've noticed in recent years as I've got older, the rabbonim now are your age group, your kid, and how many of them used to sit in my kitchen when my husband in school. And I go, it's really strange that you're now the rabbis of different shuls, so it's keep bumping into people.
We have an amazing, our rabbi who is on our board for Gettout UK is Rabbi Shachar from Mill Hill Shul.
Oh, from Mill Hill, yeah.
He's fantastic, and he's so supportive and so ready to fight our corner and be there with us. We actually have support from the chief rabbi through our lawyer, who's very close with him, and he really does support the work that is being done for Get Refusal. But we need an official endorsement from him. That would be very helpful. But yeah, we do need it. Then it needs to come from a strong body. They need to, that all the rabbis. We wanted, one of our things we were thinking of doing is having actually like one Shabbat, to dedicate one Shabbat, like find which parsha would be relevant to, and have one Shabbat that this is about Agunah, and this is where every rabbi in every United Synagogue or whatever shul will speak about the whole concept of being refused a get, and just to stand united, just to bring it up. It's a topic that has to stay alive and stay spoken about. For so many years, it was a very taboo and hush-hush topic, and literally until last year. So now we got to strike while the fire's hot. That's the only way to deal with it.
100%. Thank you. Michelle, did you want to add something else?
You said something before, Romy, about you felt that when the Get Refusers put pressure in various ways onto the Beth Din, and there was a fear that it would make them feel powerless in a way. I can't quite remember how you said it, but that was the view. I found that a little bit depressing, actually, because these Beth Din are these members of the Beth Din are the highest moral arbiters of our community, and we look to them for making decisions that affect the lives of everybody in the community, in the Jewish community, those who, you know, really follow it. And all of these ways that they're finding, or that they're trying to create, whether it's making people feel unwelcome, or whether it's stopping giving them an aliyah in shul, or it's all ways of sort of avoiding the issue and of getting away from dealing with the proper issue. And what we need is some members of the Beth Din who are bold enough and brave enough to say, this situation really has gone long enough. After so many years, it's got to be automatic. Or look, I mean, I'm not an expert on halakha, I won't pretend to be, but it needs to somehow evolve. We're dealing with people's lives here. And Rivka, and you know, I admire you. You stayed very much within the Orthodox Jewish community, but I can bet that there will be lots of women who will not wish to do so and will walk away. And it's something that we need to change for our children and our grandchildren. I'm probably older than most of you listening in tonight, but I really feel it depresses me no end. It really does. And you know, let's all see what we can do about it. Let's all try and help you in some way. I'm up for it.
I don't know if I ever told you this. In 2012, I was in my first year studying in this women's education program. And there was a big Aguna summit in New York. And it was funded by a bunch of different organizations, and really like these huge rabbis from the modern Orthodox community all over the world, all flew in for this 3-day conference about Agunot. I was 22 at the time, and I remember sitting there thinking, what an honor to be sitting in the room with so many people. And then about an hour before the first day ended, I remember being so angry. Like, we just spent the first day going over halacha together. Every single person in this room knows the halacha. The halacha has not changed. Everyone here, you're talking about Rosh Yeshiva in Israel. You're talking about the Rosh Yeshiva of Ma'ale Gilboa, these huge institutions, big rabbis, and we're talking about halacha. Like, at a certain point, this isn't about halacha. This is about leadership. It's about stepping up and finding an answer. And at the end of that day, it wasn't Blue, but it was a peer of Blue Greenberg's who started Jofa with her. I think she was probably in her late 70s. She was like an early Jofa pioneer. She stood up and she said, all of you keep saying there's a problem, and I'm waiting for one of you to do something about it. And I think she said it to Rabbi Riskin, he's the head of Or Torah Stone, and he started Efrat. And I remember like getting chills and thinking, oh God, this is not going to end well. But that was the beginning of the International Beit Din. And so things are getting done and things are moving forward. And I know that it's like easy to get bogged down and kind of depressed about the lack of leadership and the lack of bravery. And I so feel you on all of that. But at the same time, like, there's, you know, I'm actually in a cohort right now for the International Beit Din, training different rabbis and female educators from around the world on the halacha. And there's a push to do another summit, and there's a push to get people kind of put this issue back in the spotlight, and put the leaders back in the spotlight and ask them what they're doing about it. And the more women and people, but it really is, I think, going to be women, like that first woman who stood up and said, stop telling me the halacha, start telling me the answers. That's when things change. And I think that's what everyone can do. Just hold the rabbis accountable. You're right. It is the only hope for these women.
Lost you. Oh, no, it's frozen. Hello?
Oh no, they froze.
Frozen.
Frozen. Rivka?
Oh, dear. It was such a good part, and you guys have frozen.
That's the trouble with computers. They've got a will of their own.
It was such a powerful message, and they've just frozen near the end of it. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Oh.
Maybe they need to come out and in again.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
they can hear us. Can I, in the meantime, ask a really daring question of you, Jacqueline?
You can try.
I'm going to be really, I don't want to put you in the spotlight, and
You can. I'm
don't
here.
answer, I don't want an answer. They just said, or you just said, whatever, everybody just said, that every school should write down, have a policy of how we accept, well, get abusers, I think all abusers in, and then should be published and sent out. Can Bushy be one of the first communities to do that, do you think?
Yeah.
You don't have to answer. Don't
No,
answer.
I have an answer for you, Sarah. Yes, let's do it.
Because
And
I would
anyone
be
here
Absolutely,
tonight
let's do
like
it.
to help me write that policy, let's do this.
Let's
Let's
do it.
lead the way.
get abusers
know?
and abusers, because I had an
Yeah.
incident in our community a few years ago where I was verbally abused by a person and nothing was done about it. It was before your time, Jacqueline, and nothing was done about it. And I'm still pained to this day that I didn't make more of a fuss about it.
Yeah.
And it put me off shul. I could not go to shul for weeks because I was verbally abused. And there were 3 of us who were women who were verbally abused by a man who was an abuser. And at the time, nothing was done about it, even though I complained. And I phoned up the Beth Din and I spoke to the Rosh Beth Din at the time, who was 100% supportive of me and said the shul should be doing something. The shul did nothing to do to support me and the other women. And I didn't go to shul for weeks because I was too scared. And I should have done something about it. I should have spoken up.
Yeah.
So it should be get abuse and abuse,
Yeah.
all forms of abuse.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's been an interesting year for a lot of things, but I think the fact that this organization has come to light in such a short amount of time and in such a strong way is incredible.
Unbelievable.
And I don't know if that would have happened, you know, without us being in lockdown and all the rest of it. It's just unbelievable, the strength of social media and the strength of so many other things. But, you know, the conversations we've been having, even in terms of the way women are treated in shul. Someone said to me that, you know, they don't feel comfortable in Kiddush because people aren't always appropriate to them. This shouldn't be allowed in our shuls, you know, and specifically, you know, Sarah, I love what you're saying. Let's write a policy. Let's get this done in the next few weeks. We're not waiting now.
That would be brilliant.
This is not okay in Bushy. We will not accept someone coming into our shul,
Thank you.
and this is what we will do. 100%.
That would be fantastic.
Anyone
Jacqueline.
here
Thank
who
you.
can join us, please, let's do this together.
It would be wonderful. Thank you.
Amazing.
Really fantastic.
Absolutely.
So sorry, Rami, we cut off just as you were in the middle of sharing such wonderful thoughts with us. You guys froze, but you know you've really given us so much to think about. But go on, finish off what you were sharing with us, because
I don't know where I got cut off, but all I'll say is I don't know where it ended, but all I'll say is I think the more women who act like that woman at the conference, who stand up and demand accountability and demand change, that's what's going to get things done. And things are getting done. The International Beit Din is founded. We're founded. ORA, we're part of this international group called Cheirut, which is get organizations from around the world who now work together on certain cases, which is incredible. I think there might be 9 organizations or something from around the world. And you just have to keep demanding it of your leadership. That's it. Like that's the only way to make change, is to have that awkward moment of saying, this isn't about halacha, this is about people. What are you going to do? And don't stop asking. And writing a policy is an amazing start for your shul. It puts you 10 steps ahead of shul.
we Bushy are going to lead the way. This is, you know, this is so important to us, and
share it. We will promote it. We will tell everyone that Bushy is leading the way on this. And if you can have the Rav talk from the Bima in his drasha one time about the issue, you know, it's all a step in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, what a powerful evening. I have to say, you know, you guys are just inspirational in such a short amount of time to take, you know, Rivka, you've taken what you've gone through, the nightmare you've gone through, and you're going to use that to help so many people. And Rami, you know, your passion and your knowledge, it's just inspirational. I don't want people to walk away from here thinking that, you know, there's, you know, despair felt at the rabbis or at the Beth Din, because, you know, I I'm married to a rabbi. I work very closely with the Beis Din. You know, we're talking about very good, compassionate people. Do there need to be changes made? Yes, but we're working with them. And I love the way you guys said that. You're working within the system. You're trying to make the system better. You know, that really is what's happening here. And please God, you know, we can look back on this evening and say, look, the first shul that came out with their policy, and look how many shuls followed suit. And, you know, it's wonderful to hear Rabbi Shochet's support and the chief rabbi. And please God, you guys should just go from strength to strength. But no, you have a room full of women here in Bushy who are behind you 100% of the way, here to support you. And we just wish your organization, you know, hatzlacha, to the point that one day we shouldn't need a Gettout UK, right? That's the aim, that women should just get their gets. There shouldn't be an issue here.
We're waiting to close up shop.
Rivka, you should know that I chose to listen to you tonight instead of Joanne, who's speaking tonight at LSJS.
No, I couldn't.
And I told her.
Oh, bless.
Yeah, but you know, it is through the work that you're doing, the work that Joe's doing, the work that Jewish Women's Aid's doing. Thank God this is all coming on the agenda and people are speaking about it, and we'll continue to speak about it. So really, thank you all so much for joining us this evening. A big thank you to Rivka and Rami, and please God, you know, we should be able to continue supporting the amazing work that you guys are doing.
What we do on our website, which is www.getoutuk.org.
Yeah, 2 T's.
I've just looked it up, fun enough, tried to, not very good on these things, but I looked on my phone.
But more
So,
about what.
How do you want donations? Just anybody who would, whatever, give money?
Thank you so much.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much.
Did you guys said, are you doing a charity campaign? Is that
We are working on it. Hopefully it's not going to be till the end of the year time, but yes, we are starting. We are literally this week starting on working on it. So we need 2-3 months at least to work on it.
Right.
God, having a baby, a wedding, so we have to put off a little bit.
Who's getting married? 1 minute, we missed that one.
My Ariella, my middle one.
Ariella's getting. Oh right, I haven't. Okay, what was that? I spoke to Mum a couple of weeks ago. So that's
January.
Mazel tov. That's lovely to hear.
Mazel tov.
Sorry.
Wonderful. Thank you everyone for being with us this evening. That's really very wonderful.